Work. Okay, part 2, guys. So we talked about the overview of everything for the unit. We talked about the Americas. So now let's go through and talk about Europe. Okay, this is the period where Europe really starts to come into its own and starts to establish itself as a big player on the world stage. It's relatively the newcomer. So things going on in Europe. Before we even get to exploration, you have the Renaissance going on in Italy, which is going to be one of the things that decreases this desire for all of these luxury goods. You had the Reconquista going on in Spain, where they had driven all of the Muslims out of the country. And then you also have the Protestant Reformation going on with the spreading of ideas and the printing press and all that kind of stuff. Highlighter. Let's change the color back to red. Okay, so remember the Renaissance was the split in the church, because before the Renaissance, all you had was the Catholic Church. So now you have the split where you have Protestants and Catholics, and that was just over basic doctrine differences. It's very similar to another religious split that we had in the previous unit, which was a split in Islam between the Sunnis and the Shias, which had to do with who was going to take over after Muhammad. It's kind of similar to the schism we see when you have the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church. So this isn't the first time that you've had, splits in a religion. All right. Since after you have the Reformation, you are going to forever, at least for a while in Europe, have conflicts between Protestants and Catholics, and a lot of it has nothing to do with religion. It all has to do with politics. Protestant countries don't like Catholic countries and vice versa. Then you start exploration, and that's going to start with Portugal, like I mentioned over here with Henry the Navigator, who starts his navigation school. They're the one to start exploring first. They, go to the west coast of Africa. They make it to the Indian Ocean. So they're really the first to begin exploration, and they're the first to set up trading post empires. They're not going to be as successful as at trade as the British and the Dutch, but they are the first. And so once Portugal starts exploring, then you're going to have this competition for trade. Everybody has to control the different trade routes. Who's going to get what colonies? Who's going to set up trading post empires where? And the big ones at this point that are really working with trying to set up trading posts and trade routes, and then your trade companies, are going to be the British with the British East India Company, and the Dutch with the Dutch East India Company, or the VOC. And so this is going to lead to the economic principle of mercantilism, where a country's power is tied to the amount of wealth it has. And so that's really what's going to push all these European countries to explore more and to get more and more involved in trade. So once Europe explores, that's one of their reasons for exploration is to go and get into the Asian market for luxury goods, because the Ottomans controlled the overland route, so they wanted to try to find a better way to get to Asia. So they are after Asian luxury goods and textiles that come from India. And in return, Asia and India are interested in silver that's coming out of the Americas, particularly in South America. The Spanish are the ones who are pretty much dominating the silver trade because they're controlling the mines. That's what's driving their economy up, not the fact that they have, all this trade going on, but the fact that they can control silver and set the prices on silver. As Europeans are exploring, another thing that's driving them to explore and to go different places is the desire to spread Christianity, whether that be in the Americas, converting Native Americans, or in Africa as part of the slave trade, or as they're taking over East Africa. Their desire is to convert people to Christianity. Sorry. One of the things that's going to happen in Europe as a result of interactions with the Americas is going to be an increase in population. The one thing I always say is more food equals more people. And so that happens as crops are coming in from the Americas to Europe. All right. Finally, over here in 1672, we get the Russian Empire with Peter the Great. So Russia starts to emerge during this time period. They're still holding tight to feudalism. They are still dependent on serfs, and that dependency on serfs is only going to increase. Let me finish this and I'll answer my phone. But what Peter does, and then Catherine after him, is they are really focused on westernizing Russia and making them more like Western Europe.